All right, guys, today we're going to be talking about the revaluation of gold, what that means for the price of gold, what that means for the general economy, and what that also means for Bitcoin. How does the revaluation of our stockpile of gold mean anything for crypto? Let's get right into it. Okay, guys, straight from the federal meeting notes from August 1st, you can see here August 1st, 2025. You can find this online. I'll leave a link for it in the description. These are the direct notes from the Federal Reserve. The first paragraph here outlines pretty much everything that you need to know, but there's a lot more other information in this article that you can go and find and read for yourself. But we're just going to cover a little bit of it here just to get you a general baseline of what's going on. So let's read this first paragraph. With public debt at high levels, some governments have begun to explore financing additional expenditures without raising taxes while also not increasing public debt outstanding. They want to get more money to do more things without raising taxes and making more expensive for the consumer, and without doing things like printing money. They don't want to increase public debt outstanding. One possibility is using proceeds from valuation gains on gold reserves, as has been floated in the US and Belgium recently. For the US, this would involve revaluing the government's 261.5 million troy ounces in gold reserves, the largest gold reserves globally, from a statutory price of $42.22 per troy ounce to current market prices, which stand around $3,300 per troy ounce. That is literally going to create $8 to $11 trillion of money and liquidity out of complete thin air. Okay. They were originally priced at $42.22 all the way up to $3,300. That is like almost 100x in the value of our gold, which is an incredible amount of liquidity and money just being injected into the economy that the US can use to do a bunch of different things. Now, what exactly are they going to do with that money? Well, it's funny you ask, because if you look at the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act that is currently on its way through Congress right now, it's in one of the later stages actually. It's making its way through, believe it or not. If you search this article and you go down to 180, it'll bring you down to this section. Again, this whole thing has a lot of valuable information. A lot of it's confusing. You probably don't need to read all of it. However, there's one section down here that I think is the most important that I want to cover. And why does this tie into gold, the revaluation of gold? Well, here, what we are going to use some of those funds that we get from the revaluation of gold for is offsetting the cost of the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. Okay, so here we can see, not later than 180 days after the date of enactment of this act, the Federal Reserve Bank shall tender all outstanding gold certificates in their custody to the Secretary. Not later than 90 days after that tender, the Secretary shall issue new gold certificates to Federal Reserve banks that reflect the fair market value of price of the gold held against such certificates by the Treasury as of the date specified, yada, yada, yada. Then you go down to here. Okay, so we're going to give these over to the Treasury Secretary. Then what are we going to do with that? We are going to fund the Bitcoin purchase program as established in Section 5. That is part of the purpose of revaluing gold, okay? Listed right here in this congressional document, use of gold certificate remittances, and amount necessary to fund the Bitcoin purchase program. To fund the Bitcoin purchase program. Then any funds that are left over, which there still will be a lot because we're definitely not going to need $8 to $11 trillion to do this Bitcoin purchase program. Anything is going to be used to reduce the general public debt in multiple different ways. Don't know how exactly they're going to use everything, but what the Bitcoin purchase program is, if you're not aware, is that they want to commit to buying 1 million Bitcoin over the course of 5 years in a systematic and stable way. So they're probably going to set up some sort of purchase of either every day, every week, every month, or something of a specific amount of Bitcoin based off of the dollar price. So the amount that they're purchasing each time is going to fluctuate because the price of Bitcoin is fluctuating, obviously. But that means over the course of 5 years, they're going to try and accumulate 1 million Bitcoin in order to form the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve that we've been talking about for a while now. So there you have it, guys. I think this bodes extremely well for Bitcoin and gold and just the general economy. If we're going to do anything to try and reduce public debt outstanding, then that's good by any means, in my opinion. The fact that we are actually moving forward with this Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Act is kind of impressive. I honestly didn't expect it to get this far this quickly. And the use of a portion of these gold reevaluation funds is honestly, I think, a pretty good idea. We've been seeing more and more governments around the world, more and more central banks, more and more state treasuries and pensions and corporate treasuries turning to use Bitcoin as a store of value. It has gone up significantly over time, and it kind of has a pretty proven track record. That's a good thing that all these things are turning to Bitcoin, but it's also kind of a bad thing because there's a lot of volatility in the space. So I do think we're still going to have a lot of time before things in that industry start to get normalized or stabilized. I think there's going to be a lot of a lot of these people that are coming together and purchasing Bitcoin for these reserve programs that are going to be shaken out and ultimately leverage or liquidated if they have any sort of leverage because of the inherent volatility that's involved in crypto. So short run, I'm not saying this is just going to make Bitcoin skyrocket to $1 million and it's going to stay there forever. I think there's still going to be a huge amount of volatility. I just think this bodes extremely well for the future, given the track record of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And if you are a crypto holder or you're thinking about becoming a crypto holder, this is important news. The fact that the US government now has it pretty much written in stone that they are going to do this, you need to start taking that into consideration. When this purchase happens, that 1 million Bitcoin is basically like 5% of the outstanding supply. So the price is certainly going to be impacted by that amount of consistent buying. And then on top of that, we're not looking to sell it. It's not going to be traded. So that's effectively going to be taken off of the total supply, reducing the amount of Bitcoin that's publicly held, which also inherently raises the price. So what do you guys think? Let me know, is the revaluation of gold a good idea? Does that bode well for gold? And do you think a good use of that gold is to create something like a strategic reserve to try and help out the current debt situation that the US economy, the government, and Americans are facing, which is more and more of a pressing issue every day, every week, every year now? It seems like all we're talking about is how much is the debt increasing by, how much interest do we owe on our debt as a country, and how is that all going to get sorted out? So let me know what you guys think. This has been an interesting topic to explore, and I'll keep you posted if anything else comes of this. If you guys enjoy this type of content and want to stay up to date on more videos like this in the future, make sure to drop a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.